to Barebones Survival, another live for us tonight, and actually a little bit warmer, which is quite nice. But as we are progressing along with this, I wanted to bring up a topic that perhaps is something I can't actually think of a single video anywhere where I've seen this discussed, and I think it's something that, especially as a civilian, this is something that is critical to survival. So with that in mind, we can let a few people join in, and then we're going to start talking about our topics point, which I think is going to be a good one. But just get things started off. There we go. I do hope everybody has got a sufficiency of good coffee and more available. So welcome. As you know, the aim of this particular channel is basically to talk about survival and such, but very specifically in terms of being a civilian rather than anything else. Almost all of the kits out there are based on the military viewpoint, and the problem with the military viewpoint is, I must admit, not so much the gear, but very much the understanding, the thinking behind, and the aims and things like that. And by and large, it means that we prioritize, we understand, and we approach the concept of survival in a way that doesn't work. The other side of it, by and large, is that it's very much a bushcraft thing, and there's nothing wrong with that in any manner or form. Absolutely, I'm going to say that I fully support and do enjoy all of that kind of stuff as well. But again, it's something which, by and large, is specific, and it doesn't necessarily fit to survival. And as a result, what you tend to get is kits that are overburdened, shall we say, with concepts that don't fit to our daily living. I'm going to throw it out there that we need to rank what these different terms actually mean in terms of a civilian. It is going to be very, very different for somebody who is a soldier or something like that, because there's specific people in a specific environment with a specific task on hand, which by and large as civilians we are not. For a civilian, and for the purposes of the channel, I'm going to throw it out to you that survival is getting out of a particular situation wherein if you do nothing, you will probably pass on. So a survival situation is one that requires you getting out. That's the only rule of survival. And your gear and such have to aid and abet the getting out. Now, obviously, furthermore, there will be other items and gear that will be useful to more environ specific, absolutely. But your key tools, as we've discussed already so far, are your 3 primary and 2 geographic, which give you your basic. From there, we need to talk about a couple of different things. And the reason I'm bringing them up is because a great many of these so-called survival kits talk about, well, you've got to have your fishing kit and your means to hunt and your this and your that, and none of that is survival. If you've got time to sit and fish, you are no longer in a survival situation. You might be possibly in an emergency situation, but that's different. That isn't survival. All of those particular things and ideas all fit towards what happens after survival, which is no less important and certainly does need to be prepared for and dealt with. But that's not the primary aim. So we need to talk about the issues surrounding the primary aim. And I put it to you that in a survival situation, unless it's a geographically specific thing, you will not be doing shelter. You will not be gathering or hunting or fishing for food in any manner or form. You might need it in certain specific instances, we will get to that, but you will not be doing the procurement of it. You will be quite literally either getting out or sustaining yourself sufficiently long enough to a point where you can get out. So to give you an example of these things, you're at home, you're minding your own business, the building's on fire. Your first survival priority is to get out the building. Once you are out, now it's an emergency situation. And as we've said, it's very important in terms of morale and understanding as a untrained civilian that it is no longer survival where you are only having to get out and it becomes an emergency. But we deal with emergencies all the time. And because of that, we can manage an emergency. It might be tough, but we still have the automatic mentality that emergencies you deal with. The automatic mentality for a civilian is, if it's survival, is get out. So by changing our mind, we overcome the automatic panic, which allows us to manage an emergency. So with this in mind, why are we doing none of those things in a survival situation? And the answer is something which, to date, I have never once encountered a channel that actually talks about this topic, which to me is quite strange. And it definitely has to be something that is brought up, and that is time. Because in a survival situation, you won't have any. When you are in the initial situation of survival as a civilian, your only response is get out, which means that any gear you have has to be absolutely on hand, without any doubt, has to be preferably on person and readily available. And there is no, oh, well, I'll get it together. No, it's either grab and go or you go without, because there is no time. So in our scenario, building on fire, get out the building. Once out the building and it's an emergency, then you establish, how did it get on fire? Do I need to remove myself from this area? Do I have somewhere to go? How will I manage to get where I need to go? But all of that is emergency. your first and foremost priority is get out. Once out, you might find, okay, well, it's just something that happened within the building, like an electrical fault or whatever. I am no longer under threat. Therefore, now I can take my time to figure out. Or you get outside and you find there's a massive riot going on, and, well, now I need to remove myself from the area. The immediate threat is gone. You might still be under threat of losing your life, but from other reasons, you've got enough time to go through the stop issue. And if you don't know what the stop issue is, it's the acronym for an emergency. So STOP, stop, think, orient, plan. And then the second P for stop is proceed. So you get out of the burning building, you then stop and say, okay, what's going on? Think, am I injured? Is there anything I need to do right this second? Is there somebody I need to find that should have been with me? Whatever. Orientate. Orientation basically means looking around, seeing what's going on. Why did I have this situation? What do I need to do about that? What have I got to assist me? Who have I got to assist me? Because remember, unlike a soldier where basically it's either just you or it's other trained personnel and you who have the same mission, same directive, same gear, and a civilian doesn't. You might get out and go, hey, where's the granny that lives next door who has Alzheimer's? We need to find her, make sure she's okay, whatever. You're not dealing with trained personnel, you're not dealing with skilled personnel, you're not dealing with equipped personnel or necessarily personnel who are able to get around. What if you've got small kids? You need to deal with that. What's the weather like? There's a lot of other not easy to manage issues. Okay, the other situation, and we will get to it with some of the gear that is quite important, especially for a civilian, is what if I'm trapped somewhere? Well, I might need, in that case, a certain amount of food and water, but it's not going to be stuff you're going to sit and cook up. It's going to be the kind of things that you have in your pocket that you can eat on hand right there and then with no preparation at all. And it's going to be a small amount of water that, or whatever liquid, that you can just drink in and off that moment to keep you going until there's rescue. And there is gear that will assist to the rescue, because remember that as a civilian, we're not dodging an enemy, we're not trying to get tactical, or as I like to think of it these days, tactical. That's for other people. As a civilian, we want to get out and get sorted. So we want attention for the most part. We want somebody to rescue us because that's the easiest way out. And in a situation like that, ease is better. You know, yes, it's great to have special skills. It's great to have special training. Most of us don't or can't get it. I can tell you right now that most of the training and things that I got when I was in the military were great for a soldier, but not that important for a civilian. It's a very different environment. So, time. Here is where time becomes the big and important issue. Number one, you don't have time to prepare once it starts. Once you get into the situation, it's act now. That means there is never going to be sitting around and organizing and whatever. That ain't going to happen. It cannot happen. It's grab and go. Secondly, once you are going, you're not stopping along the way to faff around with fishing and doing stuff. You don't have time. Number three, you need your primary gear immediately accessible. That means that in terms of a survival type kit and all of that, you need to have it most accessible, not when and if. Now we've got some, there we go. Okay, sorry, there was people's doing pop-ups and I couldn't see what was going on. So in terms of time, even if you're out and doing hiking, camping, whatever as well, your primary gear has to be immediately available. Now, as you know, the primary gear includes a blade, a flame, and a cord, which should be on person. We've also established it's got to be small, light, easy to carry. It's got to be immediately accessible. If I find myself caught up in some way and need to cut myself free to get out, I mustn't be digging for 10 minutes through the bottom of my pack to try and find the means to do that. I've got to have it now. Again, no time. Time is critical in a survival situation. The additional things that we add to your survival include that one medical item, which is a pressure bandage. Believe me, if you need a pressure bandage, you are not digging for it. It doesn't go in the medical kit in the bottom of your pack. All of the stuff that's in the rest of your medical kit can sit there, and it's great, it's good, it's what it is. But if you've got an actual bleed, you need that pressure bandage right now, which means it's got to be on person, immediately available, because if you're damaged enough that you've got a serious bleed, you can bleed out in seconds. So it's got to grab out, slap it on wherever the hurt is, and tight as you can as quickly as possible, just to keep you going until you're out of survival situation, into emergency or sorted, and can now actually get out your medical kit and properly attend. So you're doing immediate and emergency things, which by and large means you haven't got time. With that in mind, if you will, we need to manage our layering of what we carry, where it is, how it is. Yes, carry backups if you like, that's great, somewhere else, but on you are the primary. The lightest, the easiest, the stuff you never put down, you never lose contact with, so that in the moment you are absolutely speedy. Now, I'm going to add a couple of things that were brought up by a friend of mine who is a lady. And one of the things that most guys don't get is that, especially in the modern world, ladies are concerned all the time that they might be harassed and what have you. So we're going to add one extra item to our survival level. Call it the sixth item, which is very much for everybody, but especially for ladies who do think about these things and are concerned. And when I actually thought about it on my hiking or walking kit, which is very light, and I use it when I go for walks and things, I do actually have one of these hanging on the outside where it's immediately available, and that's a survival whistle. And the reason it's so good is because they're made to be incredibly loud. And they are not only good to make sure that you are found in a survival situation, they're good in the situation where there is a potential threat to you from other miscreants, because it is that loud, it attracts everybody's attention, which no miscreant wants, and it really does help. They are very much effective in the use thereof, and because they're so small and light, there's no reason not to have one. So a survival whistle, you get something like a jet scream, but again, having it in the bottom of your bag or whatever is useless. It's got to be immediately on hand. And in fact, what I do for mine, because I always go around with a sling bag. I keep everything in there, from my lip ice to my cell phone to my whatever, because I don't like stuff in my pockets. And I generally don't like a backpack on. I like to go very light. There's a whole system around that. If you follow me, you will have seen how I've started to put together that and talked about things like that. We will go over it on the live as well if people would like. But in that regard, the basic situation is that it sits on the outside. I've got a very large, oversized blanket safety pin, which I actually use when I go camping and all the rest, to pin a blanket around me. I use it for a lot of different things, but in this instance, I use it as the clip to clip my whistle on the strap of my sling, which means if I need it, I reach down, it's right there, I can go and blow it. I've got a special 3D printed one, which somebody made for me very kindly. And I've also got a jet scream, I think they're called. Incredibly loud. You can hear them up to 3 or 4 kilometers away, apparently, dependent on terrain, of course, but they're really, really, really loud. Huge thing which I found very funny is you're advised never to blow them indoors for that reason. And being me, I did once to see what they were like. And let me tell you, don't blow them indoors. They are very effective. And if somebody is harassing you and you blew that in their face, let me tell you, they would back off. It's really loud, and you would get the attention of absolutely everybody. So there is no doubt in my mind that there would absolutely be a case whereby they're going to notice that somebody's bothering you, which makes them an incredibly effective thing. Now, in terms of all of that, access to, manage time. Be speedy in your exit between the survival to emergency situation is time. Don't mess around and have to go and find things and what have you. Prepare. It's time. Time is one of the most critical issues whatsoever in terms of survival. Once it becomes an emergency situation, it is no longer as important, but it can be still important. So in that regard, remember that they always go on these survival channels. You can last, 3 weeks without food? Yeah, good luck on that one. You'll be in rotten state. You can go 3 days without water, not in this country where I am in South Africa, but good luck with that. But you can last fairly long. But 3 minutes without air, absolutely true. And the problem with that means that you need to manage to get out. interesting reality, and this is absolute truth as well. Generally, when there is a building fire and people are in it that pass on, it is not the fire that does it. Almost never. It's the smoke. It's breathing. So you need to be able to get out and keep breathing. So the 3 minutes is the only bit that matters in terms of survival, because if it takes longer than half an hour for a civilian in a survival situation, something has gone monstrously wrong and you're in way more trouble than you can imagine. So the only rule of 3 that matters for civilian, for survival, is the 3 minutes of air. That's the critical one. In an emergency, you want to worry about the other levels, yes, but not in the survival stage. So water, food, not important. First aid kit, not important. Pressure bandage, which is first aid, is important because you're getting out and not having serious threats to your life. Okay? Light source. Look, at the end of the day, a light source is very useful. I don't include it on the survival level because for the most part there are ways to manage. However, in an urban situation, that's not necessarily always true. And I realized that it's not about having that 10 billion lumen flashlight that you can bounce off the moon that costs you thousands and thousands. No, it's having enough light in an area that's dark to manage your getting out, which is a very different thing. So these little push button mini lights, absolutely good enough. They all work because it's just enough, it's sufficient to see by to get out of a dangerous situation, and it's light enough and small enough that you will carry it. You're not going to be lugging around a massive flashlight. Now, you might say, but I can go and get, for example, one of these fancy O-lights. Yes, you can. They are very small. They are very, very, very good. And they are also very expensive. If you want something like that, absolutely do it. Because, yes, it's effective, it's useful, and it does matter. But you can get by with a small, cheap, little light that's good enough, especially in the urban situation. So, yeah, nothing bigger than a pen light is more than enough. And generally, I like these little area light type ones. I got one the other day, which didn't cost me more than about 30 or 40 rand. It's rechargeable. Yes, it's a cheap plastic Chinese knockoff, but I can clip it to the outside of my bag. If I lose it, I'm not going to cry that hard. But it does the job, and I actually use it all the time, mostly for closing and locking up the gate when I get home, because then I can see the keyholes and the locks and where to put the outer gates peg in and what have you. It does what I need without too much effort, if you understand where I'm going. Can it show very far? No, it can't, but it doesn't need to. It's enough to see where I'm going and see around me when I need that little bit of extra light. It is incredibly lightweight. It clips to the outside of my bag, so it's there. It doesn't get in any kind of way. And it's on hand immediately when I need it. I actually recently upgraded my attachment point to one of those detachable keyring type things. It's a nice metal one, and you can clip your keys on and off your belt using it. Now, I don't like to carry my keys on my belt, but I clip it to my bag strap and put my torch on. So if I want to, I can clip it off very, very easily without much effort, which is kind of cool. Now, basically what that means is I'm on hand. I'm able to get the major things. Now, the other item that I haven't actually spoken of too much, we said there are 5 base items, 6 with the whistle. What is the 4th one? Well, that's personal medication. And the reason that goes in on the survival level is quite simply because on many occasions, it's something you will need regularly and desperately. Now, I am a diabetic. I can go without for a little while, but I don't want to. It's not good for me. If you're asthmatic or epileptic, you need your stuff on hand all the time. You haven't got the time to stuff around. So it's your personal level of survival. It's not for everybody, but it is for you, and therefore it counts. So that's your base carry kit. Now, people are saying, yeah, but I can't go around carrying a knife all the time. Remember, for a civilian, it's not about a big knife. It's about an effective knife, which means you can carry something very small, light, slip in a pocket, usually a folder. I only carry a folder as my survival knife. It's part of my EDC. And there's all kinds out there dependent that might suit you. I know a lot of people say these Leatherman multi-tools are their go-to because they got all kinds of extra tools. But generally, those are people that use them for other reasons as well all the time. They have extra tools on for quick fixes here and there. You might not be the fancy mechanical type in that regard. You choose the one that fits your lifestyle. Some say that you need pliers. Maybe, maybe not. I know a guy that says the pliers that he had on his one he never used ever. So he got one with scissors, which were incredibly effective for him, and he swears by it. He says, ditch the pliers, you go with their proper like shear type scissors. He says, you go with that. You will never regret it. And fair enough, great for him. It also does have a short but decent blade on for whatever cutting might be needed, a bottle opener and can opener, because apparently you cannot manage life in the modern world, and especially not in survival, without a bottle opener. I don't know why, but apparently every single thing in the world has a bottle opener on. Go figure. So absolutely that. The whistle, as we've said, is absolutely important. Now, they talk about some kind of warmth or shelter. Now, by and large, for a civilian and for survival, unless you are in a country where the weather can be a specific threat to you, you don't need shelter. Shelter, by and large, on the survival level, is your clothing. Shoes you can walk in that will protect your feet and ankles. Clothing suitable to the weather and the day. That's it. Possibly gloves, but not necessarily. It does depend. In an urban environment, I would want gloves. Because there's far more threat to my limbs in an urban disaster than there ever is in a bushcraft type situation, just for that specific reason. So I'm throwing that out as my opinion on that. But shelter is basically what you're wearing. However, there is no reason in an urban environment that if you felt you might need it, carrying a space blanket, simply because they're so thin, they're so light, and they really do work, and they would keep you a lot warmer. So if you felt you might need it to protect yourself from the outside environment, they will work. You might, if you're in a very wet environment, want to replace it with one of those really cheap plastic ponchos, which are also as thin and as easy to carry. And they're effective. And you say, yeah, but you only get one use. Well, I don't plan on being in a survival situation every day. That's not kind of how we do things, is it? You absolutely want this to be the kind of gear that's for the once off, which is a different situation entirely. So that's my first argument, if you will. Time and layering of your kit that you choose for that kind of timing. Now, that's very, very different. I've got a list up that I'm working on that is important. Now, what about other survival items? Are there things that do matter? And again, remember we're talking civilian, so let's talk the extra items that might need to be on hand. So there are certain individuals in the civilian world that are helpless in the face of survival. The elderly, babies, and possibly your pets. You might need to have a grab-and-go bag that specifically attends to them as well, okay? If you suddenly have to get out of the house and get going, believe me, you're going to need a stash of baby food, some nappies, a blanket to keep them warm, other things to protect them, because they are useless and helpless in a survival situation. But I'm assuming they're quite important to you and you would like to keep them around. Now, the elderly, exactly the same, including a stash of their medication, because they won't be able to do it. And that's the key point. And with pets, exactly the same. A spare lead of some kind, with a harness, maybe, and a tin of food or something that will keep, but which will keep them going in the initial. I know that whenever things get overly loud, one of our dogs has panic attacks. It's a shame she's a rescue and was severely abused and all the fun things. So whenever there's loud noise, which probably will happen in an emergency situation, she goes into full panic mode. What that means is we've got special drops which calms her and does all the necessaries to make her okay. It would be necessary in a situation to be able to give her at least one dose, maybe two, to get her out. So that would be a consideration. You might need a couple of specific tools available, if not carried, in terms of getting out of where you are. Now, what do I mean by that? Well, if you work in a high rise, two things which might be important is, one, you're going to need to get through the building to get out, because it's a high rise. You can't just get out a window easily. That means you need to probably have some kind of mask that will protect you from dust, smoke, and all the rest of it. And thanks to COVID, there are quite a lot of options out there, from the basic to the really fancy. I would also say some kind of a rope that can bear your weight, just in case you have to climb down from a specific level. Just to keep that sort of thing on hand or in mind. In an urban situation, you may need a way to bypass locks, doors, fences, etc. Now, obviously, it's in an extreme situation, but if you're trying to get out of a place, know the route, know what will stop you getting out in at least two ways, so that you have options in order to escape, because that's the primary survival point. Get out. When they talk about a lot of the other stuff like communication, and I'm sorry, that's for emergency situations. That is absolutely not for survival, not for a civilian. Now, I'm going to pull up some of the survival kit type things and talk about what goes into these specifics, simply because an emergency kit and a survival kit is not the same thing. And in fact, I'm looking at the one from the Red Cross right here, and all of what they're talking about is not survival. It's emergency. And an emergency kit is really useful, but I'll give you an example. Water and food, fully for emergency. Survival? No, we're talking a couple of protein bars tops, and if you live in somewhere like South Africa, where you might find that to be an issue, maybe an electrolyte solution to stave off things like dehydration and what have you. That's your limit. Water is very important. I have a couple of things on my hiking kit for that, but they're an extra. We then go into their flashlight. We've spoken of that. Battery powered or hand crank radio. No. Just no. It's not survival. Not even slightly. It's emergency. It's not survival. Extra batteries, first aid kit. No. 7 days of your medications. Again, no. For survival, you're talking get out and manage. That means maybe 1 or 2 days tops of your chronics, nothing else. Copies of all your personal documents and things. Actually, this isn't a bad idea, and I will tell you why. You can make copies of all important documents, photographing them and keeping them on a locked flash drive. It's tiny enough that you can literally have it on person and it's never an issue, because if you ever do have to get out and everything is destroyed, these are things that are critical to have, but this is pre-preparation. So doing that I would approve of very, very much. Cell phone and chargers, well, I carry that as part of my everyday carry. My cell phone anyway, and I've got a backup charging cable which actually is a wristband, which means I can wear it without any issue, though I usually leave it in my backpack. That's not survival, but it's likely to be on hand and could be useful for a lot of different reasons, including getting help. So in the modern age, if that makes sense. Now, along with that, they talk about family and emergency contact information. Yeah, sure, if that's what you want, but write it on a small piece of paper and stick it somewhere on your keys or whatever so it's on hand but not waving around. Yeah, sure. Extra cash. Depends. It's not a survival thing, it's an emergency thing, so no, not really. And most of us will have our wallet in our pocket, which will cover that anyway. So you have that aspect. Then they talk about an emergency blanket. We've spoken of that. Maps of the area. That's an interesting one. For the emergency, yes, not for survival. But knowing how to get out of where you are, different. So there's that. Medical supplies such as hearing aids, glasses, contact lenses, syringe. No, that's emergency, it's not survival. Baby supplies, we've spoken of that. Games and activities for children. No, we're talking survival first, not emergency. We will get to emergency and talk about the possibilities of all of these things in due time, but that ain't survival. Ditch the lot of that for survival. Two-way radio. Nope. Extra set of car and house keys. Nope. Again, it's not survival. Manual can opener. Again, nope. Whistle, yes. N95 masks, yes. N95 masks are actually pretty good at keeping out smoke particulates. They're not as good as a proper gas mask, but they're a heck of a lot better than many things, yes. Matches, well, we've already said in the primary survival thing you have to have a flame source. Whether or not you are somebody that smokes or whatever, having a mini Bic lighter really isn't going to kill you, and it will be very useful. Box of matches works too in a waterproof container. Rain gear, nope. Towels, nope. Work gloves, maybe. If you're in an urban area, getting out of a building through glass and what have you might be usable. Tools and supplies for securing your home. No, if you're in a survival situation, you're getting out. Tools like that should be in your home. If I need to barricade my home from whatever's outside, the tools must be there in the house, not in my survival kit. Extra clothing, hat and shoes. No. Wear decent shoes. Have them available on hand if you are not wearing them. So if you're a lady and are wearing high heels, having a pair of good walking shoes available in your office that can be grabbed and got in a situation like this, absolutely, we will go with shoes. Plastic sheeting, no. Extra clothing, no, you wear what you are wearing. That's emergency stuff, it's not survival. Duct tape, scissors, household liquid bleach, entertainment items, blankets and sleeping bags. No, 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 no. None of that is civilian survival, not even slightly. So let's go to the other stuff that they talk about for the survival kit. First up, they talk about having a pouch wherein you've got your ferrocerium rod, of course, your lighter, yes, your paracord, because everything's paracord. Again, lighter, yes, ferro rod. If you're going out into the bush, yes, but not on a daily basis. Your torch, yes. Signal mirror, maybe. You can have something small that works like a signal mirror, that's easy to carry and not in the way and makes it possible, certainly. A bag that you can carry extra water in, maybe. Knife, plasters, whistle, that's reasonable. One thing I would consider, and this is purely because the country where I live, water is rare to get that isn't largely contaminated, and it's hot enough that not getting water can be a serious threat to life. Something like a life straw or a means to purify water, I wouldn't have it on person, but I would absolutely have it in my bag. Simply because it's that effective, and you might very well need to use something like that if you have a long walk out or something like that. Distance is a very real situation in this country. It does matter. So paying attention to that kind of thing. Now, they also say that you must have specialized food bars, and that, no, bullshit. I'm calling bullshit. Not for survival, not for a civilian. If you're going out into the bush because you're planning a trip out, that's not survival gear. That's sensible precautions for what you're doing out there, and it's for camping and stuff, and it's different. That's not survival. So again, a lot of the things they put in really aren't survival. And weirdly enough, one of the things which I do consider survival, I don't know if I've got it with me, I don't think I do, is that little clip that you can hang on your belt where you can turn a Buddy Coke bottle into a hanging water bottle on your belt. I would consider that survival. Everybody on all the channels says it isn't. I argue that it absolutely is, because I live in a country where you need water. And the ability to have something that's small and light, and I can grab trash to turn it into a means of survival, sure it is. Absolutely. So we're thinking, as you can see, from what the kit is telling us, and it's showing that, A, time is not your friend in a survival situation. You're either pre-prepared or going without. The second thing that's massively important is weight. I've seen a lot of these kits, and I'm telling you right away, you ain't carrying them nowhere. Back in the day when I was in the military, I could walk around all day with 200 kgs and be fine. Why? Because I trained every single day. I was young, healthy, fit, and all the rest of that rubbish. Well, these days, I do try to keep fit, but there's no ways that I'm going to be lugging a giant pack around all day. It's not gonna happen, and it's not pleasant. I'm nowhere near as fit as I used to be. I'm a lot older than I used to be. I'm diabetic, for God's sake. All of these amazing kits, are they important or necessary or useful items? Sure. You're not carrying them. You're not. Know this now. And very often you're going to be carrying things you're going to use for school or work or whatever. You're going out and trying to actually enjoy life. So there you've got even more weight. So the moment things become too heavy, you leave it behind. Which means, because that's Murphy's Law, the survival situation will happen when you haven't got the stuff. So your kit has to be ultra light all the time. You have no choice in this regard in any manner or form. So these are the two things that make your base kit so critical. Now, I keep mentioning that a survival kit is one thing, an emergency kit is different. That is absolutely true. And we will talk about the emergency kit and what might be useful or necessary or helpful. But no, you are not going to be carrying it around with you all the time. And for this reason, we need to consider that in a different category as a civilian. Now, you might ask, would a saw be important for survival? Generally, no. In certain instances, maybe, but if you're going to carry something, it would have to be a multi-use version, by which I mean not just for wood, for metal as well. And for that reason, a decent quality wire saw. It also means that when you're choosing what gear to carry, where do you put your money? Where do you go and spend the money on something reasonably expensive, and where can you go cheap? This is going to be in the next discussion. It is important because some things you're going to rely on. Some things, they just need to get by for a day or so. Top 3, because they lead into your emergency. Okay, that's your critical difference. With that in mind, we've gotten to talk of time and of weight, and the layering of things for convenience and effectiveness in a situation. That's your beginning spot for survival. And beyond that, we can't take it that much further. So, as we move along in what goes in where and how to carry and what matters, we will be doing another live, of course, next Thursday, 10 o'clock South African time as well. I do invite all of you to join in. I do hope you're enjoying all that we have done tonight. I hope you've had a great evening, and we will talk on more of these things in due course. So from me on Barebones Survival, thanks so much for joining, and have a fantastic evening.